that means as we go along. Yeah. So the broad subject of what I was looking into was aspects of the strong nuclear force, which is one of the 4 fundamental forces that governs the interactions between these fundamental particles, quarks and gluons. Quarks and gluons carry a property that's analogous to electric charge for electromagnetism called color charge, which can take on one of 3 values, actually named red, blue, or green. However, unlike the electromagnetic force, the strength of this strong nuclear force doesn't decrease with the distance of separation between colored particles. Instead, it depends on this parameter called the strong coupling constant, which is not actually constant, and in itself depends on this separation. So over here, we see a graph of this coupling constant for different transverse momenta values. We can think of transverse momenta and the separation like inverse qualities. So at low transverse momenta or high separation, this coupling constant blows up, and the strength of this strong nuclear force is incredibly large. But as this length decreases, this strong coupling decreases as well, and the strength of the strong interaction decreases. Another thing that I'm looking into is quantum chromodynamics, which is a field theory of this strong interaction between quarks and gluons. It is difficult to experimentally probe due to something called color confinement, which we'll talk about, and it's difficult to theoretically analyze because of this strong coupling. So quark confinement, as I said, the strength of the strong nuclear force increases with this separation between colored particles. So all quarks and gluons are bound within these composite particles called hadrons. Within these hadrons, the strong nuclear force behaves almost coulombically and gives rise to this phenomena called asymptotic freedom, where within these hadrons, quarks and gluons can essentially move around freely. So one way that you can momentarily free these quarks and gluons from being trapped inside the hadrons is to use very high energies, which is where particle colliders come in. They allow us to reach these high energies and free the quarks and gluons from being trapped inside the hadrons. Yeah, okay. But I want to examine a bunch of different parameters that would take a lot of different experiments running. So a better way to do this is to use simulations. And the 2 main simulation softwares I'll be talking about are Pythia and Erwig, which do a lot of these QCD calculations, run these collisions and simulations, and you can look at the data and change different parameters that you couldn't usually do within colliders. I actually didn't really look at jets, but jets are cool, and Austin described them very well. Basically, you have a hard parton that, as it travels, it radiates gluons, and all of these rehadronize, and what you detect in your detector are these hadrons, and you can use these collimated sprays to kind of figure out stuff about the initial parton. So what is a QCD string? It's essentially a description that comes out from calculations in non-perturbated QCD, where within hadrons, you have these quarks interacting with gluons. And the way they interact is kind of like between 2 quarks. You can imagine like a highway of gluons that flow between them and behave elastically like a rubber band. These are called homoelectric flux tubes, and they describe the quarks being held together by the gluons. They also give rise to this linear confining potential in the QCD potential, which is what dominates at large distances and causes this quark confinement. So this motivates a model for hadronization called the one-string model, which I'm looking into, which describes the fragmentation of these strings at very high energies. So basically, potential energy of these strings is stored and increases with linear separation. And at a certain point, it is energetically favorable to create a light quark-antiquark pair from the vacuum. So here I have some space-time diagrams showing the behavior of these strings. Here is just a simple one period of the elastic yo-yoing, so to speak. Here we have two vertices that describe the string breaking and pulling these quark-antiquark pairs from the vacuum. And here we have a monolith rehydrogenization of these quark-antiquark. All right, the final step of the piece of this puzzle are energy-energy correlators, which are an event observable which examines the energy distribution from a collision within a jet. They allow us to probe jet substructure and this hadronization process, which is pretty useful. And the calculation is not that difficult either. Essentially, if you have one event, which I've like pictured here, and you have particles in it, and you want to calculate the energy-energy correlator between the two particles, all you have to do is multiply their energies together, normalize by the center of mass energy, and store this angle between them called chi. So here I have graphs of energy-energy correlators for electron-positron collisions in different simulations. And this specific graph is highlighting two important regions. The first region is the collinear limit, which is as this angle between them approaches zero. And then the other one is this back-to-back limit, which is as this angle chi approaches pi. I'm interested in looking at the collinear limit because it contains a lot of information about this hadronization process, which is not well understood. So breaking down parts of this collinear limit, we have an energy-energy correlator from actual data. So here we have like this increase in turnover region right here. To the left, this is like hadron region, non-perturbed QCD. Over here, we have confinements, and then this parton region with perturbative QCD calculations. Also, unfortunately, my computer did break, which had a lot of my simulation data and graphs on it, but nevertheless, we persist. Just some of the graphs might look a little funky. Yeah. Okay, here's an example of a parameter which one would expect to be sensitive to this hadronization, and you can see this in the energy-energy correlator graphs. So this is actually a graph of parton level, which is not something you can do it in a collider, but Pythia allows us to get to that. So this is a parton level energy-energy correlator graph examines at the collinear limit for varying values of the coupling constant, which is again a non-physical thing. And we do have a defined value for the coupling constant. So as we can see, this is the lowest value, 0.06. This is the highest value or middle value or real value, 0.118. And this is the highest value, 0.25, that Pythia allows us to set the coupling constant to. We can also see that the peaks occur at different points in this angular separation. And this is actually due to the average energy of the particles that come out from varying these coupling constants. At larger coupling constants, as you may remember, the strong interaction is stronger, and therefore there's more gluon radiation, which allows there to be more final partons, more final hadrons, but those final partons / hadrons to be of lower energies. This lower energy shifts this graph to the left, shifts the peak to the left. So as we can see, this one had 0.06, will have the highest energy, and therefore it's most to the left. And as the average particle energy decreases, the peak shifts to the right. The heights varying might look a little strange at first, but the reason why these two, the heights of 0.06 and 0.25 are so low is due to different factors. As I said, for higher coupling constant values, there is more gluon radiation, and so more final partons of lower energies. And so the higher multiplicity causes this, the height of this energy correlator to be roughly equivalent to that of 0.06. Okay, I'll hurry up. But the higher energy here, but lower multiplicity, it will again be a similar height than 0.118. And finally, what I'm actually looking at is trying to find string-like behavior using these energy correlators. So an example I've given here is looking at a parameter in the fragmentation function, which essentially describes this splitting of the strings. So this B value roughly corresponds to the tension within a string. And as we can see, as the B value increases, this fragmentation probability actually decreases. And then in our energy correlator itself, we can see that lower B values cause a more right shifted energy correlator, and that energy correlator to be of lower values. This makes sense because, again, lower values have higher fragmentation, which leads to more particles of lower energies, which will shift the graph to the left. Shift the graph to the right, my bad. And also cause the height to be lower, which is what we see here. This is important because this string tension shows sensitivity to the hadronization process, and gives us something to look at. So what am I looking for? Again, looking for evidence of string-like fragmentation in these energy correlators to characterize the one string model and find features to be studied more analytically. I also want to compare some graphs with other simulation software that uses different hadronizational models, like Irwin, which uses a cluster model of hadronization. Because if we can characterize behavior that appears more string-like versus cluster-like, you can run experiments to determine which is a better model for hadronization.